Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I. I believe that until proven guilty, every man, woman, and child in this country is innocent. And that's why I fight for you, Albuquerque.
Better call Saul.
The defendant, Mr. White, has been charged with the following offenses: violation of essential principles for medical devices likely resulting in injury, violation of conformity to assessment principles for medical device manufacturing likely resulting in injury, false and misleading information, forgery and using a false document, and supplying an unregistered medical device likely to cause injury. The defendant pleads not guilty on all charges.
Yes, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Mr. Oxlong. Mr. White stands before you today because he has made a mockery out of this country's regulatory standards. In the reckless pursuit of easy profit, the defendant manufactured an unforgivably shonky range of bionic products that endangered the lives of everyone that they were supplied to. I understand you're the attending officer with detailed knowledge about ISO 13485. What can you tell us about Mr. White?
Well, turns out old mate over there was selling these bionics with pen CE marks to dodgy-looking surgeons out of the van, making bogus claims that it could make its users run 100 meters in 9 seconds, have X-ray vision, and ultrasound hearing.
And what was wrong with these products?
Laboratory results showed that there was no source of unique identification for any of the devices, so product traceability was out the window. There was also no built-in hermetic feed-through system, so fluids could leak in and out of the devices. Considering the soldering paste used inside the device was lead-based, there's a serious risk of poisoning here.
And what about the materials?
There was also an overall failure to use appropriate materials. For example, the glass models that were used in the bionic eyes were not medical grade or TGA approved. The use of old PCBs did not satisfy charge injection limits of sensitive tissue areas like the eyes. Probably the largest cause of concern was the sterility assurance level of Mr. White's devices. We found that the majority of the confiscated samples were contaminated with bacteria.
And the manufacturing facility?
Unfortunately, none of these findings were surprising, because when we got a warrant to search Mr. White's manufacturing premises, what we found more closely resembled an illegal narcotics lab rather than a legitimate biomanufacturing facility. There was no sign of leak detection apparatus to sterilize testing equipment, so that the devices were not being checked on an individual basis for quality assurance. In fact, all quality assurance procedures seemed to be absent, except for an unhinged man claiming to be the manager of quality control. But when asked for documentation describing his duties, he could only produce a bar napkin with scribbles on it. I was certainly not convinced that the rigorous control of measuring and inspecting testing of the manufactured goods was being completed legitimately.
Thank you, Hank. Your testimony has clearly provided evidence for the many transgressions Mr. White made against the ISO standards. So many, in fact, that we can pretty much throw the whole book at him.
Bruh.
I urge the jury to find the accused guilty on all counts. Mr. White disregarded the standards. He therefore violated the essential principles that constitute a safe design. He did not conform to the assessment principles which verify the quality of each manufactured unit. He misled with false advertising, he forged hand-drawn CE approvals, and has not even bothered to register his device with the TGA. All of which are criminal offences across the world, not just New South Wales.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I applaud you for being able to listen to this incoherent rambling by ISO 348 whatever. As the old saying goes, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And Mr. White was trying to save the world here with his bionic lemonade. It's not his fault if he was given bad lemons from his uncle's recycling PCB parts and a bad kitchen from his mother. The claims advertised weren't false either. It's not Mr. White's fault over here that the users couldn't utilize the device to its full potential. All he's guilty of there is a bad design choice. Furthermore, Mr. White was awarded a CE mark. He didn't forge it. All he's guilty there is his poor handwriting. Furthermore, there's no recorded cases of the product failing. And if the product is as bad as the prosecution says it is, then Mr. White's cousin should be charged, not him, just like how TUE were charged for their negligence in the PIP breast implant case.
The devices Mr. White was selling were not on the register.
The toxic lead, leaky sealing, poor sterility, and no evidence of quality insurance controls,
There's no question Mr. White violated the essential principles as well as conformity to assessment of these principles. There's no recorded cases of it harming anyone though. Well, the product is new to the market with no documentation or control of non-conforming product. It's all kept off the books, so it's hard to tell.
It doesn't matter if no one's been hurt yet. It is about whether the device is likely to cause injury. Mr. White is guilty all the same.
He made all those false claims about the product's features. But it's not false or misleading information if the user is too inept to use the bionics properly. But let's be reasonable here. Those claims are closer to superpowers and there's absolutely no evidence to support it. He is guilty for sure.
As for the CE mark, Mr. White literally penned it on, making it delible in contravention to EU law.
Unfortunately, that's not relevant in Australia. What about the fact that it was approved by his cousin with no inspection? Then, as Mr. Goodman argued, it's his cousin's negligence that's to blame. We cannot say for sure that it is forgery because the prosecution didn't prove that he knew his product was faulty.
The jury finds the defendant guilty on all charges except forgery.
The accused has sought financial gain by preying upon desperate people in an industry where the highest degree of public trust is present without care for the devastating impact it would have on them. He has breached a plethora of Engineers Australia codes, not to mention not being discerning in what he thinks is right and not practicing in accordance with legal and statutory requirements. Hence, it is in the interest of the greater community that an example be made of this vile, immoral and unethical conduct of the convicted. I will be imposing a penalty of 4 years for each of the first 3 charges to be served concurrently because of their comparable nature, and an additional 18 months imprisonment for the false advertising.